There is a moment, and I want you to think about the last time this happened to you, when you wake up in the morning with a flicker of hope. Maybe you spent the night before visualizing something better. Maybe you fell asleep feeling like something was about to shift. And then your phone buzzes, or you walk to the kitchen and see a bill on the counter, or the bank notification comes through. And within 60 seconds of being conscious, that tiny fire of possibility inside you is completely extinguished. Not weakened, not reduced, extinguished, like it was never there. And the worst part is, you cannot figure out why. You did everything right. You held the vision. You felt the feeling. You believed, or at least you tried to believe. But the moment the physical world showed up in front of your face, it won. It always wins. And today, I am going to tell you why that keeps happening and how to stop it, using one of the most unusual and misunderstood techniques in the entire history of consciousness work. It is called the dead man technique. And by the time this video is over, you will understand why it is the single most important skill anyone trying to create a new reality absolutely must develop. Before we go any further, I want you to do something. I want you to type this in the comments right now, because this is the declaration that is going to anchor everything I am about to share with you. Type this: the old reality is dead. I select the new timeline. Write it. Do not skip this. Because what you are about to learn is not a metaphor. It is not motivational language. It is a precise cognitive mechanism. And committing that statement in the comments is actually the first step of the technique. Do it now, and then let us go deep. Let me start with the black hole problem, because this is the real issue, and almost nobody in this space talks about it honestly. Most teachers of manifestation, of law of assumption, of conscious creation, they give you the what without giving you the physics. They tell you to imagine the wish fulfilled. They tell you to feel it real. And they are not wrong, but they leave out something absolutely critical. They leave out the gravitational pull of the current reality. Here is what I mean. Your nervous system has been trained since birth to treat the physical world as the only world. Every single time something appeared in front of your eyes, a sound entered your ears, a sensation registered in your body, your brain cataloged it, filed it, and used it to build what neuroscientists call your predictive model of reality. Your brain is not actually experiencing the present moment right now. That is a hard truth that took neuroscience decades to finally articulate clearly. What your brain is doing at every single second is running a predictive simulation based on past data, and then comparing incoming sensory information to that simulation. The neuroscientist Karl Friston has spent decades documenting this. His work on predictive processing shows that the brain is fundamentally a prediction machine. What you perceive is not what is there. What you perceive is what your brain expected to be there, corrected slightly for error signals. And this is why your current reality is a black hole, because your brain has been running the same simulation for years. The simulation that includes the debt, the empty bank account, the relationship that did not work, the career that never took off. That simulation is deeply grooved. It is reinforced every single morning when you open your eyes and the room looks exactly the same. It is reinforced every time the numbers on your bank statement match the numbers they were last month. It is reinforced every time you feel the same anxiety in your chest that you have felt 1,000 times before. And here is the cruel irony. The moment you try to imagine something better, your nervous system detects the mismatch between your new imagined state and your old predictive model, and it fires an alarm. That alarm is what you experience as resistance. That alarm is what pulls you back. That alarm is the gravitational pull of the 3D world. It is not the universe punishing you. It is not a sign that you are not meant to have what you want. It is your own nervous system doing its job of keeping the model consistent. And if you do not know how to deal with that, you will keep losing this battle every single time. Now, here is where Neville Goddard enters the conversation. And I want to be very precise about who this man was, because his work is often reduced to a series of affirmations and vision boards, which is a profound misrepresentation. Neville Goddard was a Barbadian-American mystic who spent decades lecturing in New York and Los Angeles from the 1930s through the 1960s. His core teaching was rooted in a radical interpretation of Scripture that had nothing to do with religion as most people practice it, and everything to do with the mechanics of consciousness. He drew heavily from the Hermetic tradition, from the work of William Blake, and from his own documented experiences with what he called revision, ladder technique, and the most advanced tool he ever taught, which he referred to as dying to the old self. Now, in the popular interpretation of Neville, dying to the old self sounds poetic. It sounds like a nice metaphor about letting go. But Neville was not speaking in metaphors. He was describing a specific neurological posture. He was describing what it feels like and what it requires to functionally stop responding to the stimuli of your current physical environment as though they define your actual reality. And the most powerful application of this teaching is what I am calling, for clarity in this video, the dead man technique. Here's where the name comes from. A dead man does not react. If you walk into a room and there's a corpse on the floor and you start screaming, the corpse does not flinch. If you stack bills on top of a dead man, he does not feel stress. If you show a dead man his empty bank account, he does not spiral into anxiety. This sounds morbid. It is supposed to, because Neville was drawing on a specific mystical and scriptural concept. The idea that to enter a new state of consciousness, you must first die to the old one. And dying to the old one means dying to its stimuli. It means your current conditions, the bank balance, the empty inbox, the medical diagnosis, the rejection, must lose their power to generate a feeling inside you. Not because you are suppressing anything, not because you are in denial, but because you have genuinely shifted your identity to someone who lives in a different reality. And the key word there is identity. This is not about tricking yourself. It is about a fundamental reorientation of who you believe yourself to be.
Now, let me bring in some modern science here, because I think it is important that you understand this is not mysticism floating in the air, disconnected from the physical world. It is deeply, verifiably connected to how your brain works. In 2014, a study published in the journal Neuroscience by researchers at Stanford demonstrated that the brain processes imagined scenarios in the same neural regions as experienced ones. The hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex, which are central to memory and identity formation, cannot meaningfully distinguish between a vividly imagined event and a remembered one when the emotional intensity is equivalent. What this means in practical terms is that every time you hold a new state in consciousness with sufficient emotional depth and repetition, you are literally rewriting the predictive model. You are giving the brain new data. You are, in the most precise sense, installing a new timeline. But here is what the research also shows, and this is the part that the visualization teachers leave out. The brain will resist overwriting old high-intensity data with new low-intensity data, which means your weak, effortful, anxious visualizations done once a day are being overwritten within minutes by your high-intensity, chronic, emotionally charged perceptions of your current reality. The 3D world wins not because it is more real, but because it is more emotionally intense in your nervous system. And so the dead man technique is the answer to this specific problem. It is a way of systematically reducing the emotional charge of the current 3D reality so that your new imagined state can actually take hold. The second phase of cognitive override is what I call deliberate identity anchoring. This is where Neville's work and modern psychology intersect with extraordinary precision. After you have observed the physical data without full registration, you immediately and intentionally redirect your awareness to the state of the person who already has what you want. Not the feeling of wanting it, not the feeling of hoping for it, the state of the person who already has it. There's a critical distinction here. Wanting is a state of lack. Hoping is a state of uncertainty. Already having is a state of settled certainty. The psychological term for this is as-if framing, and it has been studied in social psychology since the early work of William James, who wrote in the late 19th century that the way to acquire a quality is to act as if you already have it. James was not being motivational. He was describing what he understood as the functional mechanism of identity formation. When you act from the state of the person who already has the thing, the brain begins to treat that state as the operative model. Not because you forced it, because the brain is constantly updating its model based on behavioral and perceptual input, and your deliberate anchoring into the new identity begins to provide new input. You are feeding the new timeline. You are starving the old one. The third phase is what I call re-exposure integration, and this is the part most people completely skip, which is why they make partial progress and then collapse back. Re-exposure integration means that after you have done your cognitive override practice, after you have observed without registration, after you have anchored to the new identity, you deliberately return your attention to the physical stimulus that triggered you. You look at the bank account again, and this time you look at it from the state of the person who already has the new reality.
You do not change the number. You do not pretend it says something different, but you look at it the way a billionaire might look at an old photo of themselves from when they had very little money, with interest, with a kind of nostalgic neutrality, with the quiet knowledge that what they are looking at is evidence of a former timeline, not the current one. Neville described this practice extensively in his 1961 lecture series, particularly in a lecture he gave called The Coin of Heaven, where he talked about the necessity of facing the facts of the physical world without being moved by them. That phrase, without being moved, is the entire technique in 4 words. You face the facts. You do not flinch from them, but you are not moved. Your emotional state does not shift. Your identity does not change, because you have already selected the new timeline and the old facts simply do not carry authority over someone who has died to the old self.
Now, I want to address the most common objection I hear to this kind of teaching, because it is a real objection and it deserves a real answer. People say, but isn't this just denial? Isn't ignoring your bank account irresponsible? Am I supposed to stop paying my bills, stop looking for work, stop engaging with the practical world? And the answer is absolutely not. The dead man technique is not about behavioral paralysis. It is about emotional non-registration. There is a profound difference between action and reaction. A dead man does not react, but a conscious creator acts constantly. You still make the calls, send the emails, take the meetings, apply for the jobs, do the work. You engage fully with the physical world at the level of action. What you stop doing is engaging with the physical world at the level of identity. You stop letting the current conditions tell you who you are. You stop letting the current results define your future expectations. You act from the new identity and you observe the old conditions without letting them move you. And this is the precise distinction that Neville drew between what he called the servant and the master. The servant is commanded by the visible world. The master operates from the invisible one. Both exist in the same physical world. Both look at the same facts, but one is moved by them and one is not. Let me give you a concrete daily practice that integrates everything I have described. In the morning, before you check anything, before you look at your phone, before you check your email, before you engage with any 3D stimulus, spend 5 to 7 minutes in what I call new state saturation. Close your eyes. Feel the reality of the new timeline as though it is the only reality. Do not visualize it from the outside, watching yourself in a movie. Step inside the experience. Feel it in your body. Let the emotions of that reality fill you completely. The accomplished sense of financial peace, the warmth of the relationship that works, the quiet confidence of the career that is thriving. Let it be real, not as a future event, as a present condition. And then when you open your eyes and the room looks the same, you do not panic. You do not interpret the unchanged room as evidence that the technique failed. You observe it with the same cognitive override posture. That is the old timeline. Interesting. I have selected a new one. Throughout the day, every time a 3D trigger appears, every bill, every rejection, every difficult conversation, every anxious thought, you apply the 3 phases. Observe without registration, anchor to the new identity, re-expose with equanimity. And at night, before sleep, Neville prescribed a specific technique he called the state akin to sleep, which neuroscientists would now recognize as a theta brainwave practice. In the hypnagogic state between waking and sleep, the brain is maximally receptive to new patterning. The critical filter of the prefrontal cortex, which tends to reject inputs that do not match the existing model, is significantly reduced. In this state, you plant the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not the visualization, the feeling, the state, and you allow yourself to fall asleep inside that state. This is not a metaphor. The research on hypnagogic suggestion, going back to the psychologist Andreas Mavromatis and his 1987 foundational work on hypnagogia, confirms that the brain's pattern absorption capacity in this state is dramatically elevated compared to full waking consciousness. You are not just imagining, you are installing. The reason the dead man technique works where other approaches fail is this. Most approaches try to add a new reality on top of the old one. They try to build the new alongside the existing structure. But you cannot build a new house on top of an old one that you refuse to tear down. The dead man technique removes the structural authority of the old timeline. It does not deny that the old conditions exist in the physical world. It simply strips them of the power to define your internal state. And when your internal state stops confirming the old model, the brain's predictive mechanism begins searching for new data. This is what manifests as synchronicity, as unexpected opportunities, as what people call lucky breaks. It is not luck.
It is your predictive model shifting and beginning to perceive possibilities that were always present but invisible to a brain that was only looking for confirmation of the old timeline. The dead man has stopped reacting. The conscious creator has begun selecting. And selection, real selection, from a state of settled certainty, is the most powerful force in the architecture of personal reality.
I want to close with something that I think is more important than any technique I have shared today. You did not fail at manifestation because you lack willpower. You did not fail because you are not spiritual enough, not disciplined enough, not deserving enough. You failed every single time you failed because nobody told you about the black hole. Nobody told you that the physical world has a gravitational field built from years of emotional data, and that you cannot simply float above it by trying harder to believe. You need a specific counter mechanism, and the dead man technique is that mechanism. It is the one Neville called the most advanced of all his teachings. It is the one that, when practiced consistently over days and then weeks, produces the kind of results that most people describe as impossible until they experience them firsthand. The old reality is dead. You are selecting the new timeline. Write that in the comments. Let it be the first act of your dead man practice. The moment you declare it is the moment the old gravitational field loses 1 degree of its pull. And every degree matters, because every degree is a step away from the black hole and a step toward the reality you have already selected but not yet allowed yourself to live in. The technique is here. The science is here. The ancient wisdom is here. What is required now is only one thing: a choice. Not a hope, not a wish, a choice. Make it now, and I will see you in the next one.